Morning, all. It's great to see you after our one-to-one sessions over this past month. First, I wish to go through some admin before we actually start the webinar. So just to inform you that this meeting is recorded for your internal benefit and for those that are not present on this call. And just to again inform you that the Zoom functions are standard to the other calls that you have done with us in the past. So if you have any questions, please save them till the end, and please put your call on mute till we have our interactive breakout session. So the purpose of this event will just give you some food for thought on how you can be a fully fledged, autonomous, independent business and how you can grow your entity beyond this ULA project, especially as you consider how you obtain your revenue streams and consider your cost structures. We realize that parts of this webinar will be basic for some while fresher to others, and we appreciate that some of you may have learnings and knowledge to share with others, and we welcome those comments and experiences to be shared in the final discussion in the end. First, we'll go through the in terms of the agenda. Actually, before we go to the agenda, we just want to inform you that we will be joined by our panelists and our superstar catapult colleagues across different parts of the business, and these will be brought in throughout the webinar. So in terms of the agenda, first we'll go through the economic environment that your entities will face, and especially that will affect your revenues and cost stream. And second, I'll be joined by Aline Matadi to discuss how you may consider the revenue streams and cost structures in more detail. Matadi will then inform us of other resources for you to consider. And then finally, we'll have an interactive breakout session for you to mingle with other entities and discuss key revenue and cost strategies. But to ensure that you capture your revenue and cost streams effectively, it is essential to understand the current business climate your enterprise is currently situated in, globally, within the UK, and also across the East African locations. This is important for you to consider as this will affect the demand for your service, hence impacting your revenue streams, as well as the cost of delivering your product or service, hence impacting your cost structure. So to give you a high-level overview that will impact your ability of investors to invest in your entity, a deep recession is still projected by 2020 according to the International Monetary Fund, and global growth is projected to be a year-on-year percentage change of minus 4.4%. And in 2021, growth is expected to rebound to 5.2%. So outputs in both the advanced economies, such as the United Kingdom, have fared out much worse compared to the sub-Saharan African countries, such as Kenya and South Africa. But nevertheless, the level of output of these institutions are projected to stay below 2019 levels until 2021. As we expect your entity to grow, the International Monetary Fund have also provided two scenarios that your entity may be facing, and it's important to bear these in mind. The first is a downside scenario, and the second is the upside scenario. In the downside scenario, the virus proves to be more difficult, and this is where a vaccine is not widely available. So financial conditions may tighten, with corporate spreads rising in advanced economies, and both corporate and sovereign spreads widening in emerging markets such as Kenya and South Africa. And on the second scenario, the upside, this is where hopefully a vaccine is rolled out, reducing the fatality rate, reducing fear, and helping to restore confidence. This will be characterized by a more buoyant economy that will turn leading to improved prospects for SMEs, and there being a less deterioration of government's fiscal positions across the United Kingdom, South Africa, and Kenya, driving an easing in risk premiums. Also leading to a faster bounce back will then lead to fewer bankruptcies to SMEs such as yourselves, and hopefully less unemployment as well overall. But overall, we see investment across the African markets to be much lower than the global average, which has made them less resilient to external economic shocks such as the pandemic. The key thing to take into account here are that all entities present on this call will be operating in an environment where external investment from African stakeholders are minimal compared to those seen elsewhere across the globe. For the year, investment, exports, and private consumptions are set to decline, but partially offset by reduced imports. And this is propounded by undercapitalized banks, which will undermine the effectiveness of future stimulus efforts and compromise the financial sector's ability to support investment and growth over the longer term within Kenya and South Africa. Within Kenya, infrastructure investment has resulted in an increase in capital goods imports in recent years, such as those provided from yourselves. And turning more to the South and South Africa has a history of low investment, averaging below 20% of GDP since the first multi-party elections under Nelson Mandela in '94, And there may be some signs of optimism, however, for your entities if they are based in South Africa. On the infrastructure drive, Cyril Ramaphosa has highlighted the role that private investment will play in infrastructure development through blended financing models and public-private partnerships. This is part of the government's Economic Reconstruction Recovery Plan, the ERRP. And this identifies 4 overarching priority interventions. So namely, 1, infrastructure rollout, 2, expanding energy capacity, 3, direct employment stimulus, and 4, stimulating industrial growth. So an infrastructure fund is expected to provide 1 billion rand in Catholic funding to get the programme going. So this should provide you an opportunity to showcase your work to receive more government funding from the South African government. On the right, we have seen the level of output of the 2 economies projections based on the IMF and World Bank, and regional growth next year is forecast at 3.1% in sub-Saharan Africa, according to the IMF, and this is a smaller expansion than expected than much of the rest of the world. So this reflects limited policy space to sustain a more expansionary fiscal stance in most countries, and key drivers of next year growth in these economies will include improvements in exports and commodity prices as the world economy recovers, along with a pickup in both private consumption and investment. Private consumption reflecting the continued relaxation of lockdown constraints, and investment supported by a greater return of foreign direct investment and the reforms brought about by Cyril Ramaphosa. So amid the limited fiscal space, some authorities have relied on monetary policy to help provide emergency support with cumulative policy rate reductions since January 2020 of as much as 275 basis points in South Africa, and in Kenya 125 basis points. The effects of this should be cheaper borrowing for your entity to gain loans from these institutions, which will be discussed later in the webinar. And South Africa, for example, has put in place a new loan guarantee program of SMEs such as for yourselves of up to 4% of GDP. So to summarize the business risks, which will affect your revenue and cost structure. So turning to the north in Kenya, factors that will affect your revenue include, firstly, travel and tourism, where activity has muted consumer spending, consequently disrupting supply chains and thus constraining industrial activity. And second, due to the lack of agricultural exports, which have declined due to COVID, this also has the same effect. Factors related to cost structure in Kenya include an uptick in unemployment, a decline in real GDP per capita, a weakening shilling due to COVID-19 headwinds. Cost of fuel imports should also fall dramatically due to a sharp decrease in the global oil price, and electricity costs are also expected to fall thanks to rising energy generation capacity. Turning to the south in South Africa, factors that will affect your revenue include consumption demand, which is constrained by higher administered prices, persistently higher unemployment, and low confidence levels amongst households and corporates. These also act as an ongoing brake on spending. But factors that will affect your cost structure include a muted price environment, which reflects low demand in retailers, limited pricing power, and also a low pass-through of rand depreciation, which should keep inflation low. Nevertheless, potential cost pressures may stem from higher administered prices as part of efforts to put the state-owned energy utility Eskom on a sustainable financial footing. But having discussed the business context of the globe and your African market, we now turn to the United Kingdom. And the range of uncertainty within the United Kingdom is clear. With the Office of Budget Responsibility, the UK government's forecaster, having projected the lowest output for the UK in the short term, and the consensus appears that the same level of output will not reach 2019 levels till 2024 at the earliest. But this uncertainty has also led to unemployment rising to historical levels, and the effect of investment from unemployment is consequential. Banks use unemployment as a benchmark to calculate their provisions and expected credit losses, and in times of uncertainty, this is exemplified by high unemployment, the most sought after macroeconomic variable when calculating a bank's probability to default. So banks will then scale back the number of loans they will hand out to comply with the latest IFRS 9 regulations that were implemented since 2008. So the range of uncertainty with the UK is also seen on the right as well, evidenced by the largest fall in business investment on record. But existing businesses within the market that currently operate in the UK are finding it hard to acquire new contracts for their services. On the left, we have seen that businesses are beginning to struggle ahead of the government's second lockdown as UK manufacturing upturn continues in October, despite further loss of growth momentum. Construction growth has also slowed, and the UK service sector also slowed sharply during the past month. So the purpose for me to show you this is to inform you how difficult it is for existing key players within the market that currently operate in the UK to acquire new contracts for their services. And this is also corroborated on the right with declining demand from consumers as confidence dips amidst the second lockdown. But overall, the business risks in the UK are lower than that of Kenya and South Africa. So this should lead to better government and private financing theoretically. So factors which would affect your revenue stream in the UK is that while they have a relatively more supportive monetary and fiscal policy in place to help your entity, but factors which would affect your cost structure base here would be that weak wage growth has meant that unit labour costs have risen by just 1.5% a year over the past decade. And with the economy enduring a brief but deep recession, spare capacity will develop. And this will weigh on earnings growth and profit margins for the next few years. So market risk could remain low. Now, having explained the external business environment that's likely to affect your business's revenue and cost in the short, medium term, we now turn to a more granular approach and how you can make your business have a strong revenue stream for you to ensure that you have full knowledge on how your costs affect your operations. So we now consider the potential revenue streams your entity may secure, and the complexity when securing your revenue arises as it may come through different streams. And this may be because the revenue stream combines the features of both public and private finance in the simplest terms. So in the simplest terms, this could be government funding, private finance, and monetizing the service. And by government funding, what we mean is that it's simply a provision of a specified pool of money for a purpose for you to grow. And for private financing, it'll be to provide capital, equity, or debt with a repayment requirement. And finally, monetizing the service involves asking users of your service to pay in some way for what is being offered. In reality, your revenue streams may have a combination of at least two or combination of all three of these options throughout the different stages. So in the initial stage, public funding may be a driver of the project, and after the initial stages, private financing and monetizing the service may become the driver of your project. It is these latter two which will ensure the sustainability of your project into the future. And regardless of the stage, the options should be mapped, explored at an early stage of the project, which hopefully will be kickstarted in the interactive session towards the end of this webinar, which will be fun. So I'm now going to pass you in the very capable hands of Aline to explore government funding. Thank you, Aline.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Amavir, for this. I will be giving you a very brief overview of the types of grant funding that you may find interesting to explore to take forward your joint project, your joint solution. So I think that the majority of the funding opportunities at the moment come from the UK government via Innovate UK, and they're funded with the official development assistance budget coming from the UK government. So this means that all projects have to have some sort of socioeconomic and environmental impact in the beneficiary countries. So one of the most relevant funds at the moment include the Global Challenge Research Fund, Demonstrate Impact Competition. This is a competition that has been taking place twice a year, two rounds per year. And the goal of this competition is to identify solutions that have the potential to support developing countries in meeting their UN Sustainable Development Goals. And the competition usually has two phases. The first phase is a feasibility study. Smaller projects up to £60,000 and 6 months. And if applicants are successful with the feasibility study, if they can demonstrate that there is a demand and a technical feasibility for the solution in a developing country market, then they can apply for a demonstration phase, which are projects up to 500K and 2 years. So they are initially looking for solutions that are a kind of prototype stage with potential to be ready for demonstration after the implementation of the first phase of the project, of the competition. The second one is the Global Challenge Research Fund Energy Catalyst, which has the goal of supporting highly innovative and market-focused energy solutions. So this is focused more on the energy space. And there are three types of competitions: one for feasibility studies, one for industrial research. So, so let's say TRL level from 4 to 6, a little bit of R&D involved, and competition. And the third types of competitions are experimental research, so solutions that are closer to the market. Project can cost up between 50K and 5 million, depending on the stage of development of the solution. These are also competitions that are launched, I think, twice a year on couple of rounds per year, traditionally. Another one is the Newton Fund, and Newton Fund is funded partially by the UK government and in collaboration. So it's co-funded by Innovate UK and national innovation funding agencies in partner countries. So, so for example, the Kenyan Innovation Agency in the case of Kenya. And it's seeking to invest in collaborative solutions to development challenging, strengthening innovation ecosystems, and enhancing collaboration between UK and developing countries. So the scope and the size of the projects, they tend to vary depending on the country and depending on the call. And projects go up to 500K, but always looking to really focus on the commercialization aspect of the project, the solution. The final one is the Eureka Network, which has the goal of investing in groundbreaking and scalable collaborative R&D projects. They are more focused on solutions that are closer to the market, and calls are launched throughout the year with different topics. Projects go up to £1 million, but unfortunately, this one is only available for UK and South African businesses. Because they are focused on countries that are part of the Eureka network, and South Africa and UK are a part of the network. I would like to highlight that there's no really guarantee that these competitions are going to happen in the future. I believe you all have been following the government announcements, but all the funding for the Global Challenge Research Fund, the Newton Fund, and the Eureka Network have been already allocated, and now we're waiting for the spending review to understand what's going to happen in the funding landscape and the collaborative research and development landscape in next year. But we will keep you updated for sure. Also want to mention that the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the new FCDO and UKRI also have competitions, often under the umbrella of a bigger program, such as the Prosperity Fund. And these are competitions that occur from time to time. And we will seek to keep you informed of any competitions in the future. Next slide, please. So there are also grant funding provided by multilateral innovation funds that I would like to bring your attention to. So one of the very interesting one is the Global Innovation Fund, and then invest in development, testing and scaling of innovations, and they're really targeted to improve lives of the world's poorest people. So they have a really focus on how to make sure that you're addressing the needs of very low income and vulnerable people in developing countries. Applications are accepted on a continuous basis, so it's open. There's no deadlines. However, this is a very highly selective and rigorous process. And as I said, only 10% of the applicants are invited to submit proposals. But in any case, it's a very interesting fund. They not only provide grants, but equity and other types of financial support. So it's worth having a look. And another other sources of grant funding comes from trusts and foundations. So for example, there's one called data.org, which is funded, it's a partnership between MasterCard for Inclusive Growth and the Rockefeller Foundation, and they have very interesting competitions. Shell Foundation and the Kenya Climate and Innovation Center. So yeah, so these are just a very, very brief overview, and I'll be available for questions later. So yeah, if you have any questions, do let me know.
Fantastic. Thanks, Aline. And Metodi will explain us more about private financing. Thank you.
Thanks, Summer. Yeah, well, I'm here just to kind of give a very top-level overview of other kind of alternatives to government funding. Obviously, you know, it's always in the individual circumstances when you can decide what is the right mix. But you know, two other possible options are equity investment and debt financing. Debt financing meaning, you know, the most common form of debt from bank loans, overdrafts, equipment leases. But for that to be kind of within reach, companies are quite often required to have already some revenue streams and kind of, kind of evidence that they can serve this debt. Probably a little bit earlier in the development kind of process, equity investment might be also an option to consider. So this is raising the financial capital through investors. Quite often requirement it is to kind of dilute part of your equity to the investor. So as well, striking the right balance between how much you kind of give away for what you get is also kind of important, probably the most important consideration that you need to, kind of most important decision that you need to make at those early stages of your startup or joint venture. And rest assured that we will kind of help you reach out to right investors and prepare for them, because towards the end of the solution development phase, we are planning on organizing a special kind of masterclass to kind of help you prepare kind of convincing pitch. And also during the showcase, we'll make sure to kind of provide kind of space for you to engage with industry and investor partners who might be interested to kind of support you in taking your technology further. So on that note, I'm passing back to Amarveer, I believe.
Super. Thank you very much, Metodi. That's great. So Metodi, so Aline has now explained government funding, that the options are available to you, and Metodi has also explained how you can raise capital via private financing. So now I'm just going to turn your attention to monetizing your service. So monetizing the service is a recommended option we take for you to make a more commercially viable route for your service provision. So this may be more in line with a private ownership structure, and monetizing the service requires an understanding of the value you bring to customers through the service you provide. So we know that customers are willing to pay for services that create value, and the value you create will determine their willingness to pay, which will then translate into the price that you will levy, hence bringing in a revenue stream. And the payment method should also be considered in a way which is easy and efficient for all. Now, as you went through with Metodi in the one-to-one sessions with the business model canvas over this past month, it's important to tease out your customers. So which specific customers do you create value for? Is it citizens or end customers, so B2C? Is it other businesses, B2B? Or are they government authorities, B2Gov? And how do you segment them, and what do they share in common? Is it geography, demography, or any other situation? And finally, when it comes to monetizing your service, it's important to consider the different ways in which payment could be exchanged for the service that you will provide. And this is demonstrated by this list, but of course it's not exhaustive, and there's many more. And this is going to be tailored to your service offering and your business. So be free and inventive in how you do this. And we really look forward to finding out how you do this in the interactive breakout session in the latter half. So having conducted our high-level overview of the revenue streams, we now just turn to your attention to the cost structure that you could potentially impose on your entity. So knowing the fixed and variable cost structure within your business gives you the necessary know-how to determine your annual budget and goals. And knowing the relationship between your sales and expenses is key to running a successful business. So the goal of any business is to cover the fixed costs and profit from increased sales volume. And by understanding the cost structure of fixed and variable costs, you could then see and maintain your entity's profitability. Other options that can reduce the need for financial capital not included in this visual include outsourcing activities to local entities, appointing a distributor with existing channels into the target market, which may result in reduced costs and greater sales, licensing, which allows others to produce your product or service in exchange for a royalty, developing strategic alliances and joint ventures, which can reduce risk and resource requirements. And I remember some of you are also presenting this within our one-to-one sessions, as well as entering a franchising agreement. So that's it for now in terms of cost structures. And now I'm just going to pass the book over to Metodi, who will now explain the final section before we go to the interactive breakout rooms. So Metodi?
Yes, thank you, Amber. Yeah, sure. You may remember that we already started discussing this back in the days in the summer when you were all preparing your applications for Urban Links Africa, and I must say successful applications. And at some point, given that this is by requirement a joint undertaking where we require at least two partners to partner up, in order to make it a sustainable business, you need to kind of decide and consider between yourself what of this new product or service that you are going to develop you will keep in-house, and what kind of partners you will need to deliver your solution kind of sustainably onto the market. So I come up with this kind of high-level list of possible partnership structures that inevitably will concern and kind of will have a impact on your and the revenue structure and on your revenue formula and cost structure, and also on the overall mission of your business. So as Amarver mentioned, a lot of the partnerships that applied are kind of may choose to continue as strategic alliances between non-competitors, so essentially two companies which don't compete on the same market, don't compete for the same customers, but found a new niche that serves both ends. And I came up with an example, for all of those types of partnership, just to give a kind of widely known example from household names. So, for example, in the strategic alliances, Nike and Apple, obviously, like manufacturers of clothing, sportswear, and Apple, electronic manufacturer producing running apps. So they wouldn't compete elsewhere, but they found a niche that they can both fulfill best jointly and form the strategic alliance. Another interesting form of partnership is co-opetition. This is where competitors share resources and activities such as R&D costs, production, and so on. And very recent example of that is in the development of COVID-19 vaccine, where Pfizer and BioNTech, announced a collaboration that they will jointly develop this vaccine again. But presumably Pfizer has the scale, BioNTech has the the specific kind of niche expertise and R&D capabilities to deliver this, and they rather than competing decided to cooperate between themselves on this particular issue. Also quite common, and I must say that examples of competition are there also within the 7 partnerships that are on this ULA journey with us. So you may choose to continue that way in the future. So this brings me to the next type of partnership, which is joint venture. And again, popular example of joint venture is Nestle, food manufacturers essentially, and coffee machine manufacturers create a new service, new product / service, which is Nespresso. So these are again 2 businesses coming together, forming entirely new third type of business. obviously, there's always opportunity to form a supplier relationship where you become like an essential supplier to a manufacturer elsewhere, like Intel for a large chunk of the computer hardware companies. It can be, you can choose to form, especially if it's, a probably less considered, but still quite popular form of partnership is cooperative. A lot of financial institutions that we may think of are actually cooperatives, and this means that these are businesses and organizations that are owned and controlled by the members, by their members, and they share profits between themselves and meet their shared needs. So cooperative may be, again, something to look as an option to continue your partnership in a mutually beneficial way. And last but not least, especially for the many software-based and digital-based solutions that we have on the ULA program, signing exclusive or authorized distributor or resellers agreement with your partners on ground, or reaching out to new partners if you need to expand your market, maybe and the most standard and kind of proven way of developing your business. Ensure that you have the capacity to kind of not just land on the market, but also expand this market. And yeah, I think that's yes, sure. That brings me to the next slide, which is after this kind of very high level overview of possible options for you for the life after Urban Links Africa, we came up with some reference list for you of where you can kind of look for further business support outside Urban Links Africa program. So in UK, for the UK-based SMEs, there's kind of a number of sources depending on what kind of your specific needs. All of them are available independently from each other and largely for free. So Enterprise Europe Network gives you access to sector experts and growth advisors in UK and beyond. So they're especially good if you're looking into new markets for your business. And also they started recently managing the Innovate UK COVID-19 support package for innovative SMEs. So if you are looking out for information what support is available in this in the current circumstances, they are the port of call for that. Knowledge Transfer Network connects UK SMEs with the UK industry and academia to drive innovation. Also, they manage the well-known knowledge transfer partnerships between innovative SMEs and UK universities. Growth hubs, these are the locally based offices managed by local enterprise partnerships across England. So there's 38 of them. And in addition to kind of nationally available sources of funding and development, they are able to provide you more sort of regional information of kind of what kind of preferential loans or what kind of local grants are available in your in the region where your business is registered. Scottish Enterprise, the counterpart for this in Scotland. Department for International Trade, as we all know, also provide a lot of export support, but also export finance and guarantees. British Business Bank, talking about debt funding, they are government-owned bank offering affordable debt funding, including startup loans, something to consider again for your revenue sustainability. And Small Business Research Initiative is a pre-commercial procurement scheme, again, of the government for procuring innovative solutions to government-posed challenges. And on the next slide, we have asked our stakeholders in Africa to provide us kind of some reference list of kind of available business support for South Africa and Kenya. And we chose, again, based on their advice, we kind of come up with those links that you are free to. I believe this presentation will be shared with you, and you're free to kind of click through and check whether there's something in it for you. On that note, I can say that some of those partners listed here, like Innovate Durban in South Africa, Tumi Accelerator and Lake Hub in Kenya, are form part of our Tech Hub network. which are business and kind of industry organizations that we expect soon to register on our ULA platform and kind of engage more closely with our SMEs and sort of our ULA multipliers and kind of partners on ground in those countries with which we will continue to develop our relationship and with which we hope that you can work in the future as well. And that brings me back to Amaru.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mutadi. Wonderful. Explain that really clear. Thank you. So now to the interactive part of the session that we've all been waiting for. So this is where Leanne will kindly split us up into 4 breakout rooms to discuss 4 questions which you'll need to consider related to your revenue and cost structure. So now feel free to share your video, unmute yourselves and make some noise. So this breakout session should have the intended benefit for you to rub your shoulders with other entities so you can network and obtain their fantastic ideas and just steal them for themselves so you could grow. Before you start the interactive session, please bear in mind that all startups make assumptions on their proposed revenue streams and cost structures. So any assumption you make, of course, leads to risk. And it's essential that you as an entity evidence your biggest assumptions to mitigate risk for the lender or investor. And failure doing so will make the lender or investor feel that your enterprise is within a high risk category. So the more evidence you provide, the less risk it would be to raise finance through debt or gain investor buy-in for you then to grow your business. So having said that, Leanne, yes, take us away into breakout rooms. Thank you.